Okay, we might get started. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lisa Hammond from The Next Step, and I'm very excited to welcome you all to the third of our four-part series, Being Your Best Self. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Firstly, there's no need to worry if you've missed the previous sessions, being intentional and being focused, as these modules can be accessed through the Next Step website anytime. Hopefully everyone's received a copy of the workbook. If you haven't, please let us know and we'll try and email you a copy ASAP. Although this session is being presented in webinar format, we're trying to keep it as interactive as possible. So please keep your videos on, but make sure you're on mute. If you have any questions, please raise your hand and we'll endeavour to come to you. Or alternatively, please don't hesitate to write any questions or comments in the chat box. We are recording it, so if you'd prefer not to be on video, you can obviously turn that off. We have Sophie in the background monitoring any questions or people with raised hands, so we'll endeavour to address any questions or comments during or at the end of the presentation. So I guess let's get started. Once again, absolutely thrilled that The Next Step is partnering with the wonderful Vanessa Porter and Chris Wilson from Change Fit. Change Fit was created by Vanessa and Chris to support us to build our mental, physical and emotional capability to be our best selves. Today, Vanessa and Chris will take us through the third module, Being Optimistic. Despite the many distractions in the world right now, we were commenting earlier that spring's a great time for renewed optimism. It brings new beginnings, warmer weather, a time to declutter our lives, and a time to refresh and refocus. It's well studied and well documented that a positive mindset is essential for both physical health and mental health and well-being. Today, Vanessa and Chris will demonstrate that a positive mindset can also benefit our confidence, productivity, and how we connect with others. Welcome, Vanessa and Chris.
Thank you. Thanks for such a warm welcome. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Lisa.
Welcome.
Okay, so first thing I'd love to measure is, where are we sitting right now in this whole scheme? So what you're seeing now is we've got this Change Fit model that we created, a genius model, if you like, of how we put the pieces together to best serve you. And what we'd love to measure straight away is this your first, second or third workshop with us? So if you could go into the chat now, just put 1, 2 and 3. Is this your first, your second or your third with us? That'd be great for us to measure. Lots of ones, just joining in. Beautiful. Okay. Couple of threes. Woo. Okay. So straight away, we're measuring how engaged you are. That's fantastic. Beautiful. So with our first one, it'd probably be beneficial if we introduced ourselves, Vanessa, as there's so many ones. So Chris Wilson, I am a stress scientist, which means that I use biomarkers within the human physiology, and we can map stress. And of course, stress directly relates to performance. I've got I work under a brand of stress science, and then Vanessa and I have come together. She's the psych, I'm the phys, and then when we put those things together, we created something called Change Fit. Would you like to introduce yourself, Vanessa?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Great to be here today. And I guess you'll see what I kind of stand for here. But I guess from a psychological perspective, there's kind of 3 components to an individual. And we know that our cognitive firepower is one element. And when we get to a particular age, it doesn't change that much. We also know what we're like doesn't change that much when we get to our age as well. But what we do know is that our mindset and our attitude can change. And we know with hard practice, with that consistency of effort, that's where we can get these incredible gains. And that's where our learning agility really comes to the forefront, and we can really be our true potential there. So that's what I'm really, really fascinated and curious about, and continue to research and to share with others.
Beautiful. Even I'm inspired, Vanessa. Thank you. Okay, so as we look down into the our model on your workbook, in fact, that's a good point. You should have your workbook in front of you, whether it's an electronic copy, a hard copy, something, because as we go through, it's really important that as we go through this process, that you engage with your workbook, you write it down, and you sort of play with your thoughts. So today we're going to be working through optimism, bottom left. And you can see that on the outside of the optimism circle, there's 3 key areas that we focus on. One is connection, gratitude, and then outlook. Today, very much, we're going to tap into connection because that's a key thing. But the outlook is one of the great things that, and when we talk about optimism, that we're going to lean on during this session. So in your workbook, it doesn't matter whether you've hit the others, but you can see that there's a little scale. And if you look at your workbook page, in that scale on the 3rd one down, we'd love for you just to capture a moment right now and go, where am I sitting on the optimism scale? 1 being dark place, low, 10 being everything's amazing. Just scale yourself, just score yourself right now from 1 to 10. Now, with any moment like this, you own your answers in the workbook. Share whatever you're comfortable sharing. That's the key thing about today. We do ask you to share. What we often find is, thanks, Adrian, life is beautiful. Start to share your scores. You can see there are people similar to you, dissimilar, same, where their thoughts sit, where your thoughts sit. It's a really great way of connecting. Okay, 6.5, 7s. Okay, there's a few lows, mainly highs. Spring is here. Lisa said eternal optimism. Yeah, great. I missed who that was, but someone's got a 9 today, but a 6 yesterday. That's great about the fluidity of optimism. 7s, okay, thank you so much. So we've captured the moment. We're setting the tone now. Where are we sitting right now with our optimism? Do we need a few tools, a few things to focus on, or do we need a bit more support? That's great for us. Okay, can we flip the slide? Okay. So what are we doing? What is today going to be about? We're going to lean on this self-assured mindset. You'll hear different words: self-efficacy, self-assurance, self-belief. And so that self-assured mindset, how can we put you in the best state, the best position to be able to create? And then confidence in your capability to elevate your well-being. This is, have I got what it takes? Because it's, being positive and being happy all the time is actually quite draining. And so we need to be able to have resources to be able to be more positive and more confident and more optimistic. Now, what we do know is that in your workbook, we'd love for you to be able to define optimism. So if you had one word that wasn't optimistic or optimism, what word would you put down? Put that in the chat for me now, please. How would you define being optimistic for you?
I think it'd be really useful to think about it in terms of, the situation that we're currently facing right now. Most of us are in New South Wales or Victoria. So what does that mean for you in terms of being optimistic right now?
I love it. There's someone put health, engaged, living, positive comes out. Yeah,
lots of hopes in there as well, I've noticed.
There is hope, faith, hope, awareness that life in the world is cynical. Yeah, it too shall pass.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great outlook. Looking at what's possible, because we can try and create what we think should happen, but what is actually possible. That optimism and imagination together combined are very powerful. Beautiful.
Yeah, and I quite often, when we're doing the goal setting piece, we talk about I'm possible. So what looks like an impossible goal is actually I'm possible goal when you're in control and you set that goal for for yourself in the future as well. Yeah, nice.
Silver linings rather than dark clouds. Yep, perspective. Okay, thank you so much. Strong, it's powerful. Okay, so here it is. We've heard the term, we would have experienced it. I'm just going to put myself on the line there. There is a moment, not too distant future probably, where it's crept up on us, where we start to ask questions of ourselves. You know, am I the right person? Am I able? Am I contributing? What if I get found out? And what if they find out that I'm not as good as what they think I should be? All this judgment and all this measurement that we create can put self-doubt in the mind. And one thing about imposter syndrome, it's never just one or the other. It can actually be very situational. And what I mean by that is that we can, in one arena, we can be super confident. I know exactly what's going on. I've got control. We put you in a completely different environment, and then that shifts and changes. Now, I don't know about you or your particular situation, but your job role, I imagine, has shifted a lot very recently. What would normally be on a typical job description has shifted, and we speak to people in HR who have had to become medical experts, and they've had to shift around about how they play this whole game of what am I doing and how am I contributing here, and what is my position here, because it's changing so much so rapidly, and that can cause us to create uncertainty, and it can cause us to question. I'm actually seeing a lot where there's people who are shifting and jumping ship, and whatever term you want to use about looking, the grass is greener somewhere else. But typically when we create this uncertainty, it makes us feel very uncomfortable. And as we start to ask these questions in our brain, am I the right person for this? Maybe it's better if I go somewhere else. And we know there's a talent shortage in Australia right now. You work in HR, I don't need to tell you that. And what we're seeing is people are shifting sideways because they're being challenged and they're asking questions. So what I'd love to do, this is gonna springboard into the rest of our session today. If you look at your workbook, and you'll see the page where it says imposter syndrome, I want you to pick one moment where it's raised its head. It's got you to ask a few questions. So you can see, I've got a little snapshot here in the right-hand side of the slide. Just write down what it is. When did imposter syndrome raise its head for you? Box. One moment. If you've got that moment, the next one down is consider the state you're in. Now, when we say state, we are talking about physical, mental, and emotional state. What state were you in when this imposter syndrome poked its head up, when it appeared? What causes you to question yourself? And again, I'll say it again, you own the answers here. You don't have to share them, because you can't be truthful with yourself if you're concerned. What causes you to question yourself? And number two, it's asking you, how does it affect your decision making? What happens in that moment? So if you are comfortable, it's always the question. I'd love for you to share what it is, whether it's recurring or whether it was just a moment in time that's caused you to have this imposter syndrome, to ask these questions of yourself. What was the situation? So far we've done, what does imposter syndrome, or when does imposter syndrome show up for you? What causes you to question yourself? And how does it affect your decision making? If you can carry on with 3 and 4. Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Yeah. We're going to keep coming back to this moment. We're going to use this as the backbone of the further conversations. Interesting, aren't it? I mean, annoying people. What's fascinating now is we don't get the same cues that we've been getting for such a long time because we're not in the workplace with them. Yeah. Okay. So when you're not involved, it feels like they can move on without you. It causes you to question. Yeah. Yeah, it is virtual. Interesting, Faith. Yeah. That's a great share. I think that's Natalia. I think that's how I pronounce it. Yeah, unfamiliar spaces cause us to question. The learning curve is so great. Yep. I love these. These are really strong.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
thanks for the
speed.
richness and the sharing.
Yeah, the speed in which we're changing, Vicky. You're right. Okay, you can keep them going in the chat. We are going to keep moving through, but absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that really helps us when we're going through this to make sure that it's as relevant as we can possibly get it. So I want to just have a chat to you about faulty thinking. So these are bad habits of negative thoughts. What we know is negative thinking or negative thoughts are actually a habit. And these are kind of faulty patterns, or we call them in psychology, faulty cognitions that occur here. And I've just put up some of the ones that I've noticed come up a heck of a lot for people. So I want you to think about that example that when it last showed up for you, that you just noted down with Chris in a few moments ago, and just think which ones were operating there, or was it something different? So the first one is fortune telling, and this is where we just got those negative predictions about what's going to happen into the future. The next one is mind reading. I don't know about you, but this one certainly shows up for me, and just assume that we know what the person is thinking or feeling. And then there's that emotional reasoning. Well, if I felt like it was that, well, then that's how it was, right? Or catastrophizing, when you're just expecting the worst case scenario each and every time. And then there's those musts and shoulds. We quite often put these incredible demands on ourselves, sometimes others as well, where we're just being so rigid and so inflexible. We should have done this. We must do this. And that's really hard, particularly in the current situation, to just have these outrageous high expectation and standards of ourselves and others. Then you've got the black and white, and I'm sure most of you who come from an HR background here are used to black and white situations, but we all know there is a middle ground. There are so many different shades of grey there along the line, and we've got to remember that. We don't deal with absolutes. Sometimes it'd be really good if we did, but that just isn't reality. And then personalizing it, where we're just assuming that everybody else's problems are really all about us. And it's not. We've just put our ego in the way of that one there. Or there's blaming ourselves or others for what's going wrong for us at that time. Or overgeneralizing. These are just incredible broad generalizations where it could just be a one-off or a specific situation, and instead you've gone, oh, it's always like this. This is how it always is. They're always carrying on like that. And then labeling. So really cutting yourself short or others short by just putting them in a box. Oh, that's what they're normally like, so that's how they're going to react this time. This is how they're going to be. So we'd just love to see in the chat, what's your personal favorite? Or when it comes to that example that you just shared with Chris, or you kept private, how many of those were going on? I find it isn't normally just one. In fact, it can be a whole lot of those going on, and maybe some extra ones there, but would just love to see how many were present there in your example. Yeah, right. Interesting. Yeah, okay. Thanks for your honesty there. We've got a couple there coming up. Yeah, catastrophizing, shoulds, must, shoulds, mind reading, catastrophizing. Yeah, must and shoulds as well. Yeah. Thanks, Lisa, for your honesty there as well. Okay. So we know they come in, and I find it really useful that when we are thinking about these situations, to just do it like a little bit of a mental checklist here. Okay, is this actually reasonable that I'm thinking in this particular way? Is this actually based on fact? Can I challenge this? Because there's a whole lot of assumptions going on, and we need to get out of that habit and assume something differently. What if it was the total opposite of what we were assuming there? Quite often that is the case. Yeah, really great, Anna, what you're saying there. I think also hard when you've had a bad experience and it validated a fear, then it makes it even more worried, and to stop. Yeah, and then we move from that negative thinking into ruminating, and it just goes round and round and round. And unfortunately, when that happens, our body actually experiences it like it is happening again and again and again for us. Yeah, even though we're just reliving it. Once again, it's just reinforcing and just gets us into that bad habit, and it's really hard to change it. But we're going to give you some strategies today on some ideas that we found have really worked for us and our clients as well. So you've got this example when those doubtful thoughts came in. I want you to think about, well, what was going on before that? What are some of those triggers for you? Sometimes they're people, sometimes they're scenarios or situations. We know that for a lot of people, big events, like it could be Christmas, certainly puts a lot of those doubtful thoughts into our mind. So as we go through this checklist of triggers, just think about the ones that really are some of those bigger ones for you to start working through. And Chris will take you through those now.
So we're just putting these into two categories. The internal triggers, and this is not by all means the end of the list. There's plenty and very subjective to you as individuals, but as we go through, we can start to look at, okay, so as I go through this spiral of negative self-talk, I can start to reinforce that message, and then the negativity really starts to build. What Vanessa was leaning on earlier is that if we can reinforce a pathway in your brain, we can, and we want that to be positive, we can reinforce that positive message, like that neuroplasticity conversation we have, and we can actually start to make you more positive or more negative. So the internal triggers can be, we catch ourselves in that negative self-talk. We have this preset beliefs and thoughts. I think it was Anna gave us the example. Look, it's happened before, therefore it's probably going to happen again. And we have this preset. Our brain is wired to identify the mistakes that we make, because we need to look at things that can happen that cause us or challenge our safety. Now, when I say safety, not necessarily physical, but could be mental and emotional as well. So our brain will automatically focus on the negatives, and we have to counteract that. Otherwise, we can get into that loop of, right, well, what's the negative? What's the negative? And it's something that it's a skill that we have to try and create and work on. We've got these negating the successes, which goes on top of overemphasizing the negatives. This unrealistic, unfavorable comparison. If I compare myself to Vanessa, she's successful, she's, amazing, and then there's Chris Wilson.
I'll get
It's
you
not a
that.
fair. It's not a fair comparison, and so we have to be realistic. Sometimes a lack of knowledge or a lack of perspective that we interpret and fill in the gaps. These are internal triggers that can really cause us to get that negative self-talk back down. And of course, right now, there are things going way beyond our control. And these external factors, in the comments below, the reason why we get you into the comments is that we can see where your thought processes are, and we can see how these next slides can contribute. Someone was saying, well, I've had this before, or, I'm in this type of environment, Chris, where I don't really feel like I fit. And we can have all this, these triggers. I'm going to lean on that word because it's on the slide, but these other external factors that can cause us to have self-doubt, that can cause us to be negative about ourselves. What are you experiencing right now? Stick it in the chat.
I was going to say, I think, what Chris and I have really noticed, and we put it there on the second point there around external, is this real friction between delivery and capacity. So everybody is feeling like the work is just ramping up. And we thought it was already ramped up, but now it's just like, if we were on 24/7, there's just no way we could ever get to it. And we're just being asked to do more and more and more with less. And our capacity to do that is really being compromised because our lives are just so blurred. Everything is just, we're on all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to divert, but when we talk about capacity, we look at resource, and it's, I play in that space. And we absolutely understand that when we're running out of resources, we trigger quicker. And that's something that we probably capture ourselves, and we become emotionally, we trigger, we get angry, we get frustrated. Physically, our symptoms, our signs of stress start to show up quicker because we're running out of resource, running out of capacity. But of course, it doesn't end for us. We're shifting again. We've got the roadmap, people. Woohoo! But as you know, in HR, that means that we're probably going to have to undo some of the work we've done, and we're going to be stretched in different directions.
I like Adrian's humor there. Just eliminate sleep.
Right. So I can see Lisa. Yep, Adrian, everyone else. Yeah. What else is going on? You can see in your workbook, it'd be really great if you're listing this down. That's right, Fiona. They do, don't they? Some people just seem to ease and flow through life. They really annoy me. Okay. So we're in a set mindset. We've just created an environment for you. Yeah. That's right. Schooling. Oh my God. Oh my golly.
Well, you had to do it for all of 3 days, wasn't it, Chris, in South Australia?
I know. And you know what? It made me really appreciate teachers. Oh my God, I don't have time for my own child, for crying out loud. So here we are. In your workbook, you've got 4 little Post-it notes, because we all love a Post-it note. I'd love for you to go through this with us. And the first one is, how do we challenge it? Can we challenge it? Let's really think about ways in which we can. What's another way of thinking that is more realistic and helpful? So think about, I need to set the scene here. When we had the imposter syndrome, page 3, and you wrote down what it was that was causing that. Let's go back there for now. That's what we're aiming for. And then we challenge it. So what's another way of thinking that is more realistic and helpful? If we can capture ourselves in that moment, what's another way of thinking? Let's shift it. So write that on your post-it note. I love number 2 for many reasons. What advice would I give someone else if they were in this situation? You are leaders by your own right. You probably give advice and support to, I don't know, hundreds of people every day. I love that. Thank you. I often think about children for number 2. It's called cognitive distancing. So you can put a small child in a Batman costume and say, how would Batman solve this? And they'll come up with all their different ways, their utilities, or any superhero you like. They'll come up with the tool set that they have to be able to create solutions for their problems. So put your cape on, people. Good to know what you want to do it. I think I understand that, Nikki. So in your third post-it note, is there anything I can do about it? Is there anything? I'll emphasize anything. When I speak to people about this one, they go, well, I can't change the world, Chris. That's right. That is correct. So is there anything you can do about it? Ah, okay. Well, maybe I could do A, B, and C. Okay, let's start there. That's right, Heather. That is the truth. I've been through this. I've learned my lessons. I can get through it again. Okay, the last one. What is the best action that I can take?
I was just going to share there that, is there anything that I can do about it? If you can't, if it is outside of your control, and then flowing on to what's the best action that I can take. Sometimes if it isn't, but I'm still worried about it, I actually schedule worry time, which probably sounds crazy, but I actually send myself a calendar invite and block out 20 minutes to actually really worry about it. And I find then I realize pretty quickly, actually, this is really boring and there's nothing I can do about it. So I screw it up and throw it away, right? Or I think about, well, what is something that I can do? Am I prepared to do it? Great. Schedule it in. Not. Once again, throw away the piece of paper. Just that physical act of doing it really, I don't know, it just works for me. Because sometimes I can intellectualize that, yeah, I shouldn't be worried about this, but I still am. So I need to do something physically to get rid of it.
Yeah. 2 great things there is the process piece about it. So if you ignore it and suppress it, it's still there. You haven't processed it. The other one is you've got the emotional brain versus the logical brain. And in the moment, it could be the emotional brain. And then if you schedule a time and allocate time and your logical brain can take over, you sometimes go, oh, I don't even know why this is a thing. Like it's completely gone. So suppressing it and not processing it can be, it could, when it comes back, it can come back slightly larger. Flip-flopping. That's a pommy term. I love that. Got my flip-flops on. Okay. Over to you, Vanessa.
Thanks. So I guess we've kind of set the scene. Now we want to get into, well, what can you do about it? What are some strategies here? And I'm not going to read all of the ones here, but I'm just going to pull out a couple just to share with you. The first one is to change your talk track, particularly if you're suffering from that imposter syndrome piece. I know when Chris was explaining this, when that shows up for him or myself or for yourselves, what we quite often do is question ourselves. Am I good enough? Am I going to be found out? Am I worthy? Am I able to add value? All of those things. If we just turn those 2 little words around and instead say, I am worthy, I am good enough, I can add value. That totally changes our talk track. And once again, what's great about our brain is if we tell ourselves enough that we are good enough, that we are worthy enough, we can fake it till we make it. And our body, once again, experiences it as if we were good enough. So how cool is that? Start changing our talk track there. Do something for yourself. And it doesn't have to be huge, but just what can you do for yourself? Just honoring yourself and how you're coping right now, however big or small. You know, what is that one negotiable that you do every day? Not for anybody else, not for the kids, not for your partner, not for your dog, whatever it might be, just something for you. You know, something that I do for myself, and it could be quite small. It's normally about 10 minutes. I will meditate. And my dog knows that the minute I meditate, he jumps up on the bed with me and we meditate for 10 minutes every morning. And that's my little thing. Sometimes I'll even have a cuppa next to me and sip that cup of tea and just have my eyes open while I'm going through that. Whatever it is, but that's my little ritual that just lets me know I'm here for myself. I'm going to be my own best friend here. And the other thing is to track your successes, however big or small. You know, that really helps in terms of that gratitude piece there, because I don't want you to think that, you know, after 250, however many days it is, hey, Lisa, that you feel like you haven't achieved anything, because you have, you know, and it's those little things that are so important to remind yourself about. The next one I wanted to share with you, and this is one that my coach, Kemi Nekvapil, she's based in Melbourne, wonderful Nigerian woman, that suggested to me, was to reset your expectations. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I have ridiculous expectations for myself and those around me. And she said, just decide what is your anchor right now. We're all feeling a bit discombobulated. And so what's that one thing that can anchor you, that can ground you right now, and consistently hold on to it? Pick that one thing. Chris and I would say wellbeing right now should probably be that one thing for you, but that's up to you. Yeah. Let go of everything else that isn't important. Just think about that well-being piece and keep doing you. Keep being you. It's not about doing more. It's actually just being. And lower your expectations of yourself and everybody around you. And you'll find that that will not only increase your sanity, but your whole family around you as well. You know, don't be unrealistic with that. So we just want you to have a look at those self-regulation strategies there and see what else can you do a little bit more of for yourself each day. The other thing, so that's all self-regulation strategies there on page 7 in your workbook. On page 8, it's about strategies through others. This is really talking to the power of letting other people in, yeah? People who are your greatest fans, people who love you, people who don't judge you. They love you exactly how you are, yeah? And letting them in. So out of those ones there, just choose one that you'd like to make more use of. And if you feel like sharing it in the chat, we'd love to hear it as well. And also, we're expecting us to just keep being the way we have been, functioning optimally, and it's really hard. Yeah, mentors, great. Yeah, family, absolutely. being honest with them. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, Heather. As somebody who doesn't have any flesh and blood alive anymore, yeah, my friend family, they are absolutely the ones I've chosen to be close to me. Yeah, colleagues, peers. Yeah. Yeah, great, Nikki. Thank you. This is an exercise that I've done, and it took me a while to do this exercise. It felt a bit weird and hard to do. It is to gather those people that we've just talked about, whether it be our friend family, whether it be our colleagues, whether it be our kids, whatever, and ask them these 2 questions. So 10 people in your workbook, you'd put down those 10 people and ask them, what is my greatest strength? That one isn't too hard to ask, but the second question is a bit of a stickler. What is the greatest thing that I add to your life? And then just listen and allow them to share it with you and capture it. I sent it out to everybody. I was talking to them, and then I sent it out in a text message, and I've kept every single one of those text messages. And when I'm feeling a bit down, when I feel like I've got those negative thoughts, those faulty patterns or cognitions going around, or I'm doubting myself, that imposter syndrome is coming up, I literally go to the notes section in my phone and I read them. And what I found absolutely amazing when I did this is that there was such commonality in what people thought was my greatest strength that I never realized I even had. So just to share what came up for me is that they said I've got huge stores of warmth, and I do genuinely, absolutely love people. But they said that that would mean nothing if it wasn't for my calmness under pressure. So when everything's going absolutely crazy, for some reason, I just get calmer and calmer, and I talk quieter and quieter and more purposeful. And that's the greatest gift that they've experienced of me. And I never realized that. And so now when I'm feeling like, ooh, everything's going crazy in my belly and I can feel it all right, I go, well, actually, let me tap into that. Let me just ground myself into that again. So that's an activity that I encourage you to do. Maybe 10's too many up front. Just try a couple, see where the commonality is, and use that when you're facing into those challenging situations again.
Vanessa,
Yeah.
Would you recommend that they go beyond? So I could pick 3 of my very good friends and probably know their responses straight away. Could you go beyond that very close inner circle?
I think yeah, absolutely. But I do think it's worth doing it for the inner circle. So you will probably, well, I know a couple of you know, my best friend is Ian Flemington, and he's the HRD at Kimberly-Clark. He's just been promoted, actually. He's now the senior HRD for supply chain globally. And so we're like brothers and sisters. You know, we both don't have mums and dads that are alive anymore, and we've always been there for one another. And so I could have, you know, sworn I knew his answer, but he was the first one who said about that calmness. And we've worked together at Macca's before, and certainly done work with one another in our current roles. So yeah, I was really surprised by that. So I would say, yes, go to your inner circle. And then if you've got the courage, go further than that. But definitely to people who really know you and are raving fans of you. Yeah, great question. Thanks, Chris. And then we just wanted to capture your insights. I'll hand over to Chris for this one.
Thanks, Vanessa. So when we started, is a small reflection piece, and then we've taken you through, right, what's happening for you, what can you identify about yourself. These are some of the techniques that we would recommend that you could use to maybe change the conversation and to build that strength towards that optimism, positivity in the way you think. And as we've taken you through, it's a fast journey in a short time, but I'd love to know your insights. What are you getting from this type of conversation with Vanessa and I? Could you put that in the chat so I can see it pop up?
And also would love, you know, we've made sure we've got some time for questions as well. So if you've got any particular questions on anything that we've covered, please feel free to ask away as well. Or come off mute, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, Stuart. That's right.
Yeah.
Definitely not, Nikki. Honest with yourself if you can't be honest with anyone.
It's sometimes the very hardest thing to do, though. We're honest with everybody else, but it's harder to be on yourself, I think. Oh, thank you. My dad was a hypnotherapist, so I learned the hypnotic voice sometimes. Thanks, Heather.
The beautiful thing is about most of the comments that are coming in at the moment, the insights are about taking time or taking reflection back to yourself. We externalize so much, especially in your roles. We are trying to support the workers and please the people and, you know, be there for everyone. And we know that you do need to take some time back. We talk about non-negotiables, but the typical conversation for us is, you know, I don't have time to eat, I don't have time to exercise, I don't have time. And that's where things can run away from us. So if anything, if what your one insight is to take some time back, hey, that's a huge win. That's right.
Yeah, great. Beautiful.
I love that, Joe. Your brain will follow clear instructions.
It's true. So true.
Okay, so what we'd love to do is, this is our third, we've got one more to go. If there is any way in which you want to connect or carry on the conversation, Vanessa she doesn't like to brag, but she's written a beautiful book, and you can download the first part of that book, Do Less, Be More, and there's the link just there. Or if anything you want to explore about how you could use these tools, then you can reach out on any one of those. Absolutely. Connect with us on LinkedIn or come through the Next Step Network. And we do have our next webinar on the 30th of November, and that's talking about being resilient. Being resilient. But thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Vanessa and Chris. As insightful as always. On behalf of everyone that's attended today, thank you again for sharing your insights, tools, and techniques. You know, as someone who approaches life with sort of a glass half full, bringing optimism to life certainly makes it easier to ride the highs and the lows. But over the last 18 months, you know, it does get tougher, and there's a number of tools in there that are definitely very beneficial. As always, my workbook is full of notes, and I look forward to revisiting that. I was just going to share one thing that I picked up, well, a couple. I think tracking your successes is incredibly important, and I think I barely remember what happened yesterday, let alone last week. So keeping a track of, you know, those wins so we can remind ourselves of the wins. I love, you know, the feedback from our friends as well, Vanessa, although that does take a bit of courage, I think, to go and ask people what they think of you and the connections. But one that I also liked in the self-regulation strategies in particular was changing our language and self-talk from am I to I am. This reminded me of something I read recently where someone had reorganized all their apps in their phone into affirmations. So one of them was, I am financially healthy, for all their finance and banking apps, or I am strong for their health and wellbeing apps, or I am connected for their social media apps, etc. And I thought that was really wonderful. Take a little bit of organizing, but you know, something potentially to take away as well. So thank you again. The webinar has been recorded and will be uploaded on the Next Step website over the coming week. We will also send out to everyone a quick survey and would really value your input and feedback around that as well. And also, I think Sophie's just shared the Care Monkey link. As we said, keep an eye out for the next series, which, as Chris just highlighted, Being Resilient on November the 30th, another Tuesday. But Vanessa and Chris, thank you again so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great afternoon, everyone, and
thanks,
bye for now.
Thanks for your great engagement. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.